Howdy friends, Wild Bill here with another video of a great camping destination. I heard a lot about the Black Hills National Forest in South Dakota, and particularly about Custer State Park. So I Googled the park and was a little overwhelmed with the number of campgrounds within the park. Yikes! With 7 major campgrounds and over 300 sites to choose from, where do I start? I did some research and visited the area and put together this video just so it will be easier for you to find the perfect campground and campsite for you and your family. Please keep in mind that I video all types of campsites and not just accessible ones, and my favorites are sites I think everyone would appreciate. So you know how you watch these YouTube videos and they tell you what they're going to show you, and 15 minutes later they still haven't showed you what they promised? I hate that. So I'm going to show you up front where each campground is, a quick overview of its features and my personal observations, along with a list of my favorite campsites. Hopefully this will help you quickly figure out where to start, and then you can take a 4K video tour of each campground and see 4K videos of the majority of the campsites. I try to get every RV site on video and will include some tent sites and cabins just to give you an idea of what that area looks like. Are you ready to get started? Well, let's giddy up. For those who don't even know where the Black Hills of South Dakota are, you can see that it is located in the southwest corner of South Dakota, very near the border with Wyoming, and just north of the border with Nebraska. You can see that Custer, South Dakota is just south of I-90 and southwest of Rapid City, South Dakota. The area is known for its must-see sites like Mount Rushmore, Badlands National Park, Sturgis, Crazy Horse Monument, Devil's Tower, and Wind Cave National Park, just to name a few. Here is an overview map of Custer State Park. The actual park is the shaded area on this map, and you can see that most of the campgrounds are located in the northern part of the park, and the southern part of the park is the wildlife loop. You will definitely want to take a drive on the wildlife loop, going both directions and at different times of the day, and you will see why later in this video. Before you come this direction, do yourself a favor and take a moment to notice all of the tunnels highlighted on this map. Many of them are very small, so you will want to take a route that avoids these narrow one-car tunnels if you're driving an RV or pulling any type of travel trailer. Also note that Needles Highway and Iron Mountain Road are fun to drive and picturesque, but not necessarily fun to drive an RV on. Everyone has their own criteria for campsites, but here's a simple breakdown of the campsites in Custer State Park based on some common camping criteria. I've listed campgrounds with electrical hookups, those that have a good location, those that have some good views, others that are near the water, and others that are great places to go for some peace and quiet. Okay, here's my quick rundown on each of the campgrounds, starting with Sylvan Lake Campground. It's located near a beautiful lake with great road access to Custer, Crazy Horse, and Mount Rushmore near Keystone. If you have a camper, you'll want to come in from the north or south because of the tunnels east on Highway 87. Most of the sites are on the smaller side, but there is electrical at most of the sites, and water is available at multiple locations in the campground. Even though the area is a little busy with traffic, this campground is tucked away and is in a very quiet area. There are no ADA campsites here, and I didn't find any sites flat enough that I could recommend as being accessible. Be sure to go to the actual lake in the morning or the evening and watch the osprey as they fly around fishing in the lake. You'll want to be sure to check out my campground worksheet in the link above or in the description of this video. I have individual campsite features along with my ranking. I like sites that are not jammed right next to another campsite, that are fairly flat or a decent size and have some shade. You may have other criteria, but here are my favorite campsites highlighted at Sylvan Lake Campground. Center Lake Campground is located in the north section of the park and has no electricity. It is spacious and in a secluded and very quiet setting of tall pine trees. There are 2 main loops, and the campsites are a little larger and spaced a little further apart than most of the other campgrounds. It has a mixture of RV and tent-only sites, so pay attention to that. Some of the sites are a little rugged, and some have driveways that tower above the picnic area. This campground is perfect if you don't like your neighbors 15 feet away, and if you can handle some of the inclines. We saw wild turkeys and deer in the middle of the day here. The upper and lower loops both have big, beautiful ADA campsites that are paved, flat, and near the bathrooms, which are simply accessible vault toilets. As with the other campgrounds, water is available at multiple locations. Here are some of my favorite sites noted on this campground map. Grace Coolidge Campground is a small campground with a primarily RV loop and a separate tent-only loop. The campground is just off of Highway 16A, but is not as noisy as you might imagine. It has some really nice views of the meadows and some really pretty sites that run along a creek and a rocky cliffs on the other side. This is a great spot if you enjoy electricity, a bubbling creek, and some dense shade. It has 2 ADA sites and a couple of others flat enough if you have some mobility issues. Check out my map with my favorites noted on the campground map. Game Lodge Campground is also off of Highway 16A and has larger sites for big rigs and some great tent-only sites along the creek and next to a small pond. This was one of the flattest campgrounds in Custer State Park and has 3 ADA sites and almost a dozen more that would be accessible. Sites are spaced nicely, but shade is sparse in parts of the campground, so be sure to check out the campground worksheet to find out what kind of shade you can expect in each site. This campground also has a few cabins, which I have filmed if you want to check into those. You can see that I have quite a few sites noted. If you enjoy wildlife as much as I do, then be sure to take a drive along the wildlife loop. I can't tell you how much time I spent getting these photos. There is an abundance of critters, especially in the morning and evening hours. The wild burros and prairie dogs will keep you entertained, and bison, pronghorn antelope, and wild turkeys will catch your eye as well. Bluebell Campground was my personal favorite, primarily because of the campsite spacing, good shade, and some sites that had a great view. There are 2 major loops within the campground, with campsites in one and cabins in the other. Electrical is available at most sites and water scattered throughout. There was a huge ADA site near the bathroom and about 4 other sites that were flat and accessible. This campground has some great views from some of the cabins and campsites along the top of the map. This campground was also extremely quiet, and it is set quite a ways back from the highway. I've shown you my favorite sites on the campground map here, which are highlighted. Legion Lake Campground was one of the most accessible campgrounds in Custer State Park. Almost every site was flat, and they had 1 ADA site, but it had no shade. One side of the campgrounds had small trees and not much shade, and the other side had some really pretty sites that backed up to the woods. You would think that it would be noisy so close to the highway, but it was tucked back behind a nice ridge and was extremely quiet. You can see my favorites were listed on the shady side with the big trees. Stockade Lake Campground is 2 loops on either side of the Stockade Lake, but no waterfront campsite. Both campgrounds are very quiet as they are tucked up in the hills. The North Campground is pretty rolling in terrain, sometimes even within the campsites. Most of the sites have good shade, and there are some tent-only sites interspersed. There are no ADA sites in this campground, but about 8 sites that I thought would be flat enough for accessibility. South Campground has some issues with shade, and some of the sites are a little small. There are no ADA campsites. You can see my favorites highlighted on the map. Well, I don't know what you think, but I think that's some great information right there, if I don't say so myself. Now stick around and use the timeline index to tour each campground and see some of the sites. If you've come this far to see Custer State Park, then you can't miss a trip to see Mount Rushmore. It is pretty amazing to see in person, and I was very impressed. Another site that I found equally as amazing was a trip to Badlands National Park. I had no idea what to expect, even though I had seen pictures of it before. It is out in the middle of nowhere, and you have to imagine what the indigenous tribes and early settlers thought of this area as they traveled across flat prairie and then ran into this. Make sure you at least drive through and check out some of the lookout spots along the way. If you like to drive, then there's some great ones in this area. The Needles Highway from Sylvan Lake, the Highway 16A, the Iron Mountain Road, and Spearfish Canyon just south of Spearfish, South Dakota are some great scenic drives, but you do have to pay attention to the road if you're driving. Let's get started on our 4K campsite videos, beginning with Sylvan Lake. I thought this area would be noisy given its proximity to highways, but it is actually pretty quiet. The campsites here are on the small side and fairly close together, and it is only a short walk to the lake if you enjoy bird, squirrel, osprey, or people watching. You can tell right away that most of the campsites are going to be small and pretty close together. Site 23 was tucked back into the trees with a little bit of privacy. I really liked Site 30 as neighbors weren't too close by. Site number 32 was a nifty pull-through. And 34 was a really nice size. If you check the map, Center Lake Campground is tucked back off the beaten path and was by far the quietest area we visited. Sites were further apart, and the whole campground is under a great umbrella of tall pine trees. Site number 6 was like many of the sites, where the parking area was much higher than the picnic area, so make note of that. Site number 13 was one of the few flat sites. Site 19 could definitely handle a larger RV. Site number 22 was a great site along the creek. Site 26 had a long driveway and was fairly flat. Site 31 was a great ADA site. Please don't use this unless you have a mobility issue, as there is good access to the parking pad, picnic, and even the fire pit. Sites 35 and 36 had long driveways and a big area to camp. The upper loop has more terrain problems than the lower loop. And site number 48 is a good example. Many of these sites have two levels, parking and camping. Not bad for camping, but challenging if you have a larger RV or have bad knees or hips. Site number 56 was a nice ADA-only site with a wider driveway and access to the picnic and the fire ring. Site number 58 was a great site with a little bit wider driveway and fairly flat to the picnic area. Grace Coolidge had some great spots along the small creek. Site number 3 had a great view of the meadow. I loved site number 6 as you had a great view of both the meadow and you were close to the creek. If you notice, there are some cliffs on the other side of the creek. Site number 11 had a good-sized motorhome in it. Sites 13, 15, and 16 didn't have much shade and backed up to the highway. Site number 20 was a wonderful ADA site for those with mobility issues, easy access to the picnic and the fire pit. Game Lodge was a really nice campground with some really spacious sites. This was one of the flattest campgrounds in Custer State Park and had 3 ADA sites along with almost a dozen more that would be accessible. Site number 3 was a good ADA only site by the bathrooms, but it offered very little shade. I thought site number 4 was better because it did have more shade. This campground has some much longer driveways than some of the other campgrounds, and it was also pretty flat. I took a video of several of the cabins that you can rent here, just so you can see what they look like and how they were spaced out. Site number 26 was a spacious ADA-only site, but again, no shade. I really liked Site 27 as you didn't have neighbors real close by. There are some great tent sites along the river, as you can see on the video, and also noted on the campground worksheet. You might need to learn how to rappel down a hill if you're on site number 34. Site 39 looked like a park along the creek. Site number 43 was gorgeous as well. I thought Site 53 was a cool spot next to the pond, as were some of the cabins. Bluebell Campground was my favorite campground, as most of the sites were spread out and some had some really good views. There are 2 loops with campsites in one and cabins in the other. Sites number 2 and 3 backed up to wide open spaces and were quite nice. The road was one way, so the sites show up out of order. So just reference the campground worksheet if you're looking for a particular campsite. Sites 8 through 11 were nice sites, but it kind of backed up against other sites, lending to not much privacy. Sites 28 through 30 were also nice large sites. Sites 20 and 21 had a very nice view to go with the large campsites. Site 13 was a fantastic ADA site next to the restroom. It was very spacious, especially for someone in a wheelchair or a walker. I couldn't figure out what campsites A through E were for, but since they were not on the map, but I'm guessing they might be for staff that are working in the area or something like that. I took the time to drive through the cabin loop so you can get an idea of what they look like. Cabin 14 and 15 are actually wheelchair accessible. Legion Lake was definitely the flattest and most accessible campground in the area. One side of the loop had some shade issues, and the other side was nestled under trees and had a large ridge behind it. The ridge blocked most of the noise from the road nearby. Sites number 13 through 18 were great. Site 19 was the ADA site, but it had no shade until late afternoon. I thought Site 20 and 21 were a little too close to the highway for my liking, but it may be perfect for your situation. Our last campground is Stockade Lake, both north and south. These campgrounds were on some rolling hills, and there were no designated ADA sites in either. However, my campground worksheet shows about 8 fairly flat sites you may want to check out. I wasn't a big fan of the pull-up to sites along the main road, such as sites 7 through 9 and number 11. Site 14 had a nice long driveway and was fairly flat. Site 18 was a nice site. Site 25 and 26 were nice size and fairly flat. Sites 31 through 35 is where there's a little more congestion with sites close by each other. Site 36 was fairly secluded, but had a fairly short driveway. Sites 41 and 42 had steep slopes on 3 sides of the driveway, so be aware of that. There is a nice scenic drive to the South Campground with a nice day use area, playground, and scenic place to hang out. Stockade Lake South was a much smaller campground than the north one. Site number 3 was fairly flat and shady, but some of the first sites are on a steep grade or rolling terrain. Sites 7 and 8 are really nice tent-only sites. I found sites 17, 18, and 19 to be a nice size and flat. Site number 22 was a great site, but you do have to back in with trees very close to the driveway. If you look closely on the video, you can see what I'm talking about. I included some of the cabins in this area as well. I came across one of the most popular ambassadors of the Black Hills. I promised this guy would make him a movie star, and his friend overheard me. These guys will rub up against your mirrors, bumpers, and I had one scratching his head on my trailer hitch. Try not to feed these guys, but they sure are friendly. Well, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed this episode and gleaned some useful information from it. It's about time for me to mosey on out of here, but I wanted to remind you to like and subscribe to my channel, but most importantly, share it with a camping friend so they can check out the more than 60 campgrounds across the United States that I've reviewed. Until next time, and so long.